Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tahona Society cohort. Today we're doing Designing a Sustainable Business. My name is Jen Oakley. I am the Agave Ambassador for Pernod Ricard. Joining us today, once again, is Valerie Kramus-Hollins, who is the Strategy Design Director at Agenda 28. Before we get into Valerie's presentation, just a little overview. This session is a part of Portland Cocktail Week's intensive cohort designed to equip students with the tools to get their ethical businesses off the ground. 50 bar professionals were selected for the cohort. Well, they'll join us for these public classes and some private classes led by the brightest minds in the sustainability and entrepreneurship space from the hospitality industry for 5 weeks. All of these classes are leading up to the Altos Tahona Society 2025 global competition in September, where the U.S. finalists will have a shot at winning a $50,000 grant. So today, Valerie is joining us for a session where we'll harness the power of design, thinking to craft sustainable businesses. Throughout the session, she'll guide you through the design thinking process, from identifying pressing environmental or social issues to ideating innovative solutions, prototyping, and testing them. Through practical exercises, you'll gain hands-on experience in integrating sustainability into every aspect of your business model. So before we get into it, there are a few things we'd like to ask fans of this account to do. Please like us on Facebook, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and please comment below and ask questions, especially if you are one of our 50 cohort students. Your comments and your questions are how we mark you as present. Also, head on over to tahonasociety.com to sign up for the brand new Tahona Society app. You'll find expert talks, networking spaces, and other sustainability resources there. And you know what else is on the app? It is the Tahona Society competition submission form. So go download the app ASAP. So now I'm gonna pass it over to Valerie.
Hey everyone. It's really nice to be here again. I know that some of you weren't last week with me, but we had an amazing class about business model canvas. And today I'm going to teach you a really important tool, which is design thinking. And I really hope that this help you structure better your ideas. And of course, if you have any question about your business, you can contact me in the Altos Tahona Society community app. Please do so. I'm there, and also all the resources from this class will be there. So please go and enter the community. It's completely free for those who don't know it. And we have a lot of resources and a lot of things that will be really cool for the coming months. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself for those who haven't been with me before. I am Valerie Kramus. I'm the co-founder of Agenda 28, which is a design studio specializing in social impact. What we do is that we create products, communication campaigns, strategies for the social impact sector. So we do things for social initiatives or environmental initiatives that help the world. And we've been working with Altos and Tahona Society for the past 7 years. And we are the coaches of the Tahona Society, helping bartenders become social entrepreneurs. So today, I'm going to teach you about a really cool process, which is design thinking. And this will help you to design a better sustainable business. So let us start with a very important question. Why is thinking about the end user important? Okay, so I really want you to know that if there's something important when you are starting a business, is to understand who is your end user, what is their pain, and how can you get to them. Because if you don't really design around the end user, things like these happen. So this, for example, is from a very popular brand, but still it's completely difficult to understand where is up and where is down. As simple as that, because there was not enough time to really recognize what's important for the end user. Or even examples even better like this one. For example, Colgate decided once that it was going to be a good idea to create a lasagne made out of the brand of Colgate. Of course, it didn't happen, but just imagine the number of decisions that were to create this packaging, and they didn't even think about the end user at all. Right now, it's actually living in a museum that I love, that it's the Museum of Failure. But even though it wasn't in the market, it was like a really weird decision of how to understand the end user. And then, of course, we have all the other important products that were a massive failure in the market. Like, for example, this one. Nokia developed this phone many years ago, and they were like expecting this because it was the big launch of the year. It was going to be almost like a Nintendo, and it was like with a lot of features. It also had a Twitter feature, except for one important use, that it was almost impossible to make a call. It was really difficult to understand how to make a call. So it was just like kind of crazy to have a mobile phone without being easy to make a call. So things like that are just like examples of many, many products that have had really bad failures because they are not understanding the end user. So without a deep understanding of the end user, failure is inevitable. Again, without a deep understanding of the end user, failure is inevitable. So what you need to do is to really, really empathize with your end user, understand how they think, how they live, how they are experiencing the pain problem that they are having, so that you can really design something that is valuable for them. So there's a really cool methodology that you might have heard about. It's called design thinking. So design thinking is, in other words, thinking like a designer. So I don't know if you have friends that are industrial designers, but usually when an industrial designer is designing something new, he will always start by doing a prototype, right? So for example, if he has to design let's say a chair for a kid, the first thing that they will do is to measure and start building things to see if a kid will like that chair or not. So that's thinking as a designer. So many years ago in Stanford, and an agency, also a design agency called Ideate, decided to do a methodology that was all about how the designer think, and it's called design thinking. And now this methodology, it's used for everything you can imagine, from education to startups to strategic planning in big companies, whatever you want, even in your own life. Design thinking is a very easy to use methodology that helps you to become more flexible, but also it's very important that the end user is always at the center. So these kind of methodologies are called human-centered methodologies, because the human is at the center of everything that we do. So at the end, the main goal of these methodologies is to create something innovative, right? So to create something innovative, there's three things that we need to consider. Because if you invent something that it's new, but no one desires that, or it's not even viable in terms of finance, or it's not feasible for building it in terms of the technology, then it's not an innovation. It's just an invention. It's an idea, but it's not really an innovation. So when you actually have the three components, then you can call your idea an innovation. So always you need to find something that is desirable, viable, and feasible. It's always the three things that make something that will actually work on time. So whenever you have an idea, think about it. Like, how can I make it that people really want this? And usually it's because you are responding to a pain. How can I make this? How can I produce this with the technology that I have? Or where is the technology that I need to build this? And then what kind of money will I need to start this? So that's the viable and the financial part of it. So the three components make it an actual innovation, and that's when you can go ahead with the idea. Now, a lot of people think like, no, I'm not creative enough. Like, people think that the ones that created amazing ideas are the ones that just woke up one day with an amazing idea from scratch and build it, and that was it. And the reality is that the design process is more like this. So usually you have a very long period of a lot of uncertainty with a lot of different research that you have to make so that you start to find the different patterns and the different insights. But it looks like that. It's very confusing. Sometimes you don't even have a clue of what you're doing. Sometimes you think your idea is garbage. But the truth is that it's when you really go through all that process and you commit to learn in that process that you start to find more structure in your idea, more clarity, more focus, until you have an actual idea that you can design. So don't worry if you feel that you are lost. Don't worry if you don't feel that your idea is perfect, because it's more about, becoming a social entrepreneur. It's more about being strong and trying to be, like a thick thin, having a thick thing so that you can have failure after failure. So don't worry if your idea is not perfect right now. So that's part of the design process. Now, what's the design thinking methodology? So the design thinking methodology has 5 phases, and these phases are not linear. It means that when you start, you actually have to go back, and then it's just more like a set of tools that you can use for different phases of your startup. But you should always have, like a mindset of a beginner, where you are always learning again about your end user, and where you are always prototyping and testing, even though you have 10 years in your startups or 30 years. You have to always think and test and ideate and define and go back and back. So this process should be a non-ending process, right? So the first step is to empathize. We are going to talk more about what does that mean, then define, then we go to ideate, then prototype, and finally test. So phase 1, empathize. So as I mentioned, this methodology is all about really understanding your end user. Who will be your customer, but who will be the user of your end product or service? So what you need to do is to develop a really deep understanding of the end user and the problem we want to tackle. So it's, again, if you are not solving a problem or a pain, then it will be very difficult for you to actually create a business that is sustainable over time. So it's very important that you really understand what's the pain of that user. So in this phase, the main goal is to gain insights that serve as inspiration for the different phases. But as I said, it's always something that you have to do. Always observe your end user, because there's a lot of changes and people change over time and trends change over time. So you always have to be observing what's happening with your end user. So some methods for this phase. You can start with secondary research, which is very important. Secondary research is super easy because you can just go through Google and just search for the keywords and just create like really deep research about the things that you want to learn. Observation is really important because observation is all about really understanding like what's happening. But there's a method that I really love that it's even better, which is called immersion. Immersion, it's trying to be that end user for one day or 1 week. So you go and live with them. You try to do exactly the same lifestyle that they have, and usually you learn a lot. Also, you have to make a lot of interviews. There's also an empathy map that I'm going to go through right now, that it's also very simple to do, but also very insightful. And then also another map that it's called the customer journey map, which maybe you have heard of it, but it's just trying to learn what happens with the user in each phase of the journey through when they are becoming aware of your product or service until they become an advocate of your brand. So this is the empathy map. And again, I'm going to upload all these tools to the community app. So just go to the community.tahanasociety.app so that you can download these tools. And this is a really, really, really simple tool to use. It's called the empathy map. And it's all about just trying to start to brainstorm the things that you know about your end user. So first of all, you start with who is your end user, then key insights of the secondary research, and then here you have the face of your end user. Of course, you can change the design, but you have to write down in the top part, what do you think they think and feel? What do you think that they see? What do you think that they say and do? And what do you think that they hear? Okay? So this is important because it's all about finding what are their frustrations, their obstacles, but also their wants and the needs. So when you finish this analysis, then you can go to the down part of the canvas, and here you can put the actual pains, fears, frustrations, and obstacles, and then the gains that they would like to have, wants and needs. Okay, so it's very important. Again, it's all about finding insights about what's a real important pain that you would like to solve. Okay, so this is a very easy way to do empathizing phase. But again, if you can do immersion, that's the one that will become more powerful. So the more tools that you use from the empathizing phase, the better insights you will have. Okay, once that you have gained a really deep understanding of the problem and your end user, then you can go to phase 2, which is all about defining an innovation challenge. And this will guide you the rest of the design thinking methodology. And this methodology recommends you to frame a question. And this question has to be formulated with how might we. So how might we, and then add a high level goal so we can, and then add the benefit to society. Why it's so important to have a good question? Because sometimes you can just do a lot of brainstorming and a lot of testing around an idea when you actually don't have a specific question. And it's very important that this question is not too broad, which means that it's an impossible thing to solve. For example, how might we end with global poverty? That's huge, and that's extremely difficult to address in only one social enterprise. But also try not to be that specific. For example, how might we change the table of my bar, right? So it needs to be in the middle point, not too broad, not too specific, so that it's super easy to address, but at the same time, it's challenging, because what we are trying to do is to define a question that it will be your innovation challenge. So, for example, how might we improve the waste management of bars so we can create less impact on landfills, for example? That would be a good question. So make sure that you have a specific question. And for example, Einstein used to say that it's important, if you have just 1 hour to answer a question, you have to use 55 minutes to define the question and 5 minutes to solve the question. Because if you don't have the right question, then you won't be able to do anything innovative. So make sure to have a really good question. And if you see that it's not working at some level of the methodology, then just change it. Again, like, this methodology must be super flexible, because then if something doesn't work, then you can go back and then go forward. You can just jump through these steps. The idea is that it's super flexible and that it's very lean so that you are creating a lot of innovations. And then when you have defined your challenging and innovation question, then you can start with the ideation phase. So the ideation is just to start creating additional innovations of your proposed product, service, or program. And it's very simple. So you just have to make a brainstorm. It's very useful to use Post-its, but sometimes people get stuck a lot in this kind of brainstorm. So let me just go through some useful steps to see if it's something that you can do. So first of all, you need to grab the Post-it where you wrote down your how might we question and paste it on the top of a wall or a table, right? Then, if you are working on a team, make sure that for 5 or 10 minutes, try to write down individually without sharing other ideas so that you can share as many ideas as possible in your Post-its individually. If you're not working in a team, don't worry. You can just create as many ideas as you can in 5 or 10 minutes. The idea is that you don't stop the brainstorming. Don't worry and don't judge the ideas at first. So don't try to overanalyze each one of the ideas that you're writing. This process must be more like, like rapid brainstorming. So anything that comes to your mind, write it down. Even if it's crazy, even if it doesn't make sense, don't worry. What we need is a lot of Post-its here. Okay? And then whenever you have a lot of ideas, then you can start putting them in a wall or in a paper, or if you're working digitally in the mural, wherever you want to work, and start to organize these ideas, right? So organize these ideas by clusters that are ideas that are similar, and try to put the ones that now become a little bit crazy, a little bit apart, but try to see if there are some patterns. Now, what happens if you get stuck in the exercise and you are not really becoming very creative during the brainstorming? There's like some exercises that can be helpful for you. So one of them is thinking about the future. So this is called the futuristic brainstorm. And what you have to do is to imagine like long-term possibilities and innovations of your idea. So what if we were in like 50 years apart or 100 years apart? So I don't know, like think about things that are super crazy of the world that you would like to see in 50, 100 years, and try to be super crazy when ideating here. The other exercise, it's called the cross-industry ideation. This is about drawing inspiration from other industries. So for example, what would your idea look like if it had the same business model as Uber or as Airbnb or as a luxury brand like Chanel or as a luxury hotel like the Four Seasons, whatever. So try to make things and cross-industry ideation just to start thinking about ideas that are, out of the box and that might help you create really interesting business models, okay? The other exercise, it's called reverse thinking. So this is about challenging assumptions by flipping the problem. So imagine that the problem is already solved, and that's a way of seeing like why it's solved, and then you can think of ideas of better solving the problem. So sometimes if you get stuck, it's better to reverse thinking so that you think in another way. Then the other one is the worst idea method, which is generating really bad ideas to uncover hidden insights. So use the ones that were super crazy and that didn't make sense to create this worst idea method. Just like, how can I work this out? So I don't know, this seems like a really bad idea, but if we change this and this, it might be a really good idea. So that can be also a very useful exercise. And then there's the constraints exercise, which is more about trying to create with specific limitations. So think that okay, I have this idea, but what if I don't have any money to do this? And your mind becomes more creative because it's trying to overcome that constraint. So it's very helpful to what happens if you don't have the technology? What happens if you don't have the the available resources in your country? So that will help you also think about all the constraints that your idea has currently, and then how can you just overcome them. And then there's the mashup ideation exercise, which is just combining unexpected elements. So try to think of all the ideas that you created in the first brainstorm and just start to mash up all of them and see if you come up with something that is completely different and unique, and sometimes is very useful. So the idea is that during this phase, it's all about just brainstorming, ideating. Don't try to make it super perfect, because the process is not meant to be perfect at all. The idea is that you really become creative, and remember that everyone is creative here. Like, there's a lot of people when we do these kind of workshops that tell us like, no, I'm not creative enough, this will be super difficult for me, whatever. No, like, creativity, it's something that we have as humans. The problem is that usually when we were children, we were super creative, and then suddenly life happens. We become adults and we are not really ideating anymore. But it's more like a muscle that you have to exercise. And if you are like becoming more and more used to these kind of methodologies, you will become again very creative, because you are already creative, like, because it's again something that we have as a human. Okay, now let's go to phase 4, which is prototyping. I believe that this is the most important phase of this methodology. So prototyping is all about producing an early, inexpensive, scaled down version of the product or service that you want to build, okay? So you have to build something because you have no idea how much you can learn from just building something, even if it's from things that you have in your house. You can use Legos, you can use whatever you have, from paper clips, whatever you want. You have to do a prototype. So what are the steps from the brainstorm session that you had like different ideas? Try to decide the idea that you want to prototype, and then define how are you going to build this prototype and build it. But again, it has to be super simple. So for example, this is a rocket. So this is made out of things that we found in our desktop. So it should be super easy to build. And it doesn't need to be for showing other people. It's just for you to see what works. And whenever you are building, you are starting to have like more insights. Like, this should be different. This should be in a specific size, etc. If you are building an app or something that is more digital, you can either draw and start to see, for example, if it's an app, what are the features that you are going to have, what will be like, these are called wireframes. So just try to start drawing your wireframes, and you can either do it by hand, or you can also use some really cool tools that are out there that are pretty cheap, so that you can start building your wireframes, because the process is the thing that will teach you a lot. So remember, by building, you are going to get a lot of insights of what can work or not work. If you build something and you see that it's not working, just stop there, go again to the ideation phase, change things, and start building again, okay? So this process must be, as I said, very flexible, so that you can learn as fast as possible. And there's a very important term that I really like to use when building a startup, that it's called the MVP. So M stands for minimum, V for viable, and P for product. And this term is very important because it's very similar to a prototype. So usually when we start a company and we want to launch let's say, a product or a service, we usually wait until it's perfect to launch so that we can go and just put it out there to the consumers and see if it works or not. But for that to happen, usually there's a lot of investment in time, in resources, in a lot of money. So if you wait until your product or service is perfect, then usually it will be just like a gamble to see if it works or not. And it can be a lot of time consuming. And of course, it can become very frustrating if it doesn't work. Now, if you work with an MVP, that means that you are going to work with the most minimum, so the most rudimentary, bare bones foundation of the solution possible, that it's sufficient enough for early adopters, and that it's something tangible that customers can touch and feel. So prototyping and rapid prototyping, the ones that we were seeing here, it's just like the first phase, and this is more for you and your team. But when you are working with an MVP, it's something that you are building that can go out there to see if it resonates with the consumer and if it works or not. So, for example, let's think about a new software, and the actual guy that decided to do all this methodology, it's Eric Rice, and he has a really good book called Lean Startup. I really recommend that. And he actually has a really good story because he was building a software for, I think it was AI. This was many years ago, but he spent a lot of time, like many years. He did some rounds of funding. He was spending a lot of hours of his work doing this product, and it's suddenly like they were ready for launch. They launched it and it failed. So he learned that we have to build things that are simpler to see if the customers really like it before we actually finish all the features. So try to think about how can you build an MVP so that you can start going like out there and see what kind of feedback you can get. One of the things that I really like, it's, for example, the MVPs that are called the Wizard of Oz. Okay, so the Wizard of Oz, as you might recall the movie, it's all about like doing something that appears to be super produced when in reality there's just one person behind just doing everything. Okay, so try to think how you could actually build an MVP where you can put something there, for example, a landing page or an Instagram account, and start to see what happens with the consumers and the end users. Are they following you? Are they subscribing to a newsletter? Are they subscribing to a wait list? And that's how you can start to learn if it's something that will happen or not. And if it's something that is not resonating, then change as fast as possible. Again, this is all about changing and pivoting as fast as possible until you have something that that clicks. I always say that, you know, it's almost like if you have different parts of a startup and you are ideating for a long time, and then suddenly you feel that all the parts start to fit. And that's how you know that it's ready for more investment and more resources, because it's actually something working. But try to bootstrap and to start with something that it's simple so that it can teach you more insights from the beginning before you spend a lot of time and see that it's not working at all. Okay, so prototyping, and if you can, creating an MVP, it's the most important phase of this methodology, because that's where you are going to learn if it's an idea that works or not. Another way to actually MVP or make a prototype is to enter competitions. So, for example, the Tahana Society competition will actually help you to see if the idea resonates with the market, because you will go through all the process of judges and pitching the product and different coaching and all of that. That's a really good way to just like see if your idea has potential or not. Even if you don't win the final grant, you are actually learning a lot during the process. So if you have an idea, if you have the dream to build something, I really, really encourage you to enter the competition, because it's a very easy way to have resources to learn more, but at the same time, to start to see if the idea has potential or not. And then finally, phase 5, it's all about testing, right? So once that you have built your prototype or your MVP, it's time to test, test, and test. So if it's a rapid prototype, it's all about testing with the people near you and just trying to pitch your idea and see if it's resonating. And if you have an MVP, then you can do more complex validation. But the idea is that you validate as fast as possible if it's working or not. So, what kind of questions you need to know? Do the users desire it or not? Will they use it? Is it easy to understand? Is it solving the user pain? Will it have a social impact? And of course, are they willing to pay for that product or service in case you are a social business and not a nonprofit? So that's the kind of questions you need to answer in this phase. So if they don't desire it, if they don't use it, if they don't understand it, you have to change things. So remember, you can go back to the first steps of the process, and remember that the design process is not linear. It's not that your first idea will have all the success. Companies are doing this all the time. We saw the examples from the beginning that are from really big companies that have had a lot of years in the market, and still they are learning that there are products and services that people don't understand or that they don't desire. So it's really important that you go back if some of these questions don't work when you are validating. And again, it's all about trying to have this thick thing, this thick skin, so that you can really go through all these phases of frustration. And failure doesn't mean that it won't work ever. It just means that you need to ideate again. So don't worry if it's not working at the beginning. It doesn't need to be perfect, okay? And let me tell you a little case study of something that actually happened to us in Agenda 28. So some of you already know a little bit about our story. We started, we are from Mexico, and we were the first female team to be accepted in the Harvard Innovation Labs, which was an amazing challenge and an amazing opportunity, but we were super scared when we started. And one of the first projects that we won as an agency was this nonprofit called Barakan Bundle, which wanted to build something for reducing infant and maternal deaths in India. So they said, like, there's a really famous idea that is working around the world, which is the baby box. I don't know if you have heard of this idea, but in the Nordic countries, they usually give a box for newborn babies with a lot of items so that they can survive. And this was a program that was ideated back in I think 1920s or something like that, to reduce infant mortality because of hypothermia, right? So they give this box, they have all the items that they need, and that's how they reduce the infant mortality rate almost to zero, with other programs as well. Well, some years ago, it became really popular because the government of Finland gave England a gift for the new baby princess, so that it was like a symbolic gift. And the BBC made an article about this program. It became super popular, and suddenly all the countries wanted to have this social program in their countries. So they tested out in different countries, but of course the needs of the babies in Nordic countries like Finland and Norway and all of that, are not the same needs as the children in Africa or in South America or in Asia, etc. So we started to see some nonprofits that were implementing this program with very, very bad failures. Like, for example, they gave away the box, and the box was meant to be also the first crib of the babies. So if you go to Finland, you'll see that the newborn babies sleep in that box because, the box is what they need to just stay warm during the night. But if you go to a slum that doesn't have floors and that it's super dirty and there's a lot of rats, of course the box won't, and it's super humid, the box won't last for more than 1 week. So the problem here was that they weren't adapting that program to the needs of the people that were benefiting in the different countries. So they hired us and they told us, we want to build a baby box that is much better and that it's actually something that people want in India. So we went to India and started to do all the design thinking process. And we were working with this prototype back in Boston, where that it was a multifunctional prototype. So the idea is that instead of doing a cardboard box, we were going to build a bathtub that was at the same time a crib, and then you can also use it as a diaper changer. So it was 3 in 1, and we were super proud about our prototype. We were presenting that in the Harvard Innovation Lab. They loved the prototype. We went to Mass Challenge. Mass Challenge is a very important startup program in the US and in other countries, and they loved the prototype. And at least we decided to go to India. And our prototype that we thought that it was perfect, we were actually thinking about just how are we going to produce this? And we were already doing research about the different suppliers and everything. Well, when we arrived to India, the prototype was good for 5 minutes. So the moment we arrived there, we did a workshop with women and also students from the communities that we wanted to help. And it turns out that they hated the prototype. But just they said, this is not a crib, it won't work, and that's it. And we were like, why? This is 3 in 1, this should be super innovative, etc. And they said, well, it turns out that in India, if the crib doesn't swing, it's not a crib at all. So in very poor communities in India, when you are sleeping a baby, you need to actually make the crib swing so that it sleeps. And the other insight is that they sleep during the day and not during the night, because since the houses are very, very poor, they don't have windows or even floors or anything. And the only chance for babies to survive is if they are close to their mom. So they need to sleep with their moms so that they can actually survive. And it's something that even the government and the health organizations really encourage to do, because they have more chance. So first of all, one of the things is that if the prototype was going to be good, it needed to swing. And the second thing is that it turns out that in that part of India, there was a tradition that there was a wooden structure like this one that passed from generation to generation. And it was very important for the culture. So that's called the godiyu. And that's where they put the crib so that the children sleep during the day. But poor communities didn't have this tradition, and they felt really sorry about that. So what we found is that in order to create a baby box that was very useful, then one, we needed to do something that was more similar to their culture. So we needed to use materials like bamboo. It needed to be super simple. Of course, it had to have the safe requirements of international creeps, but at the same time, it really needed to compile with the things that they wanted in the communities. So maybe the creep wasn't going to save any lives, except for the fact that it had a mosquito net that was very important for reducing malaria. But the things that really help mothers were the things that are delivered with the bundle. That's why it's called Barakat bundle, because it's a bundle of different items that help mothers just to take care of their babies in the first months so that they have more chances to survive. So very interesting, because again, like, we thought that we had the perfect prototype. We tested out in different venues and different shows, and it used to be like something that we thought that it was going to be like the best product for them, and it turned out that even last not even 5 minutes. So if you don't think about the end user, then probably you are working a lot in a product or a service that won't last long. So key insights. First of all, design thinking can be practiced by anyone. So don't tell me that you are not creative. Don't think that these kind of methodologies are for people that are very innovative. Design thinking is super simple, and you can actually use this methodology for anything you want. There's even some classes around how to use design thinking to design your own life career. There's design thinking for how to create your menus of the week so that you can eat healthier. It's for everything. And we have done these kind of workshops with children, with adults, like anyone can practice design thinking, and it's very useful. Second, observe human behavior. So the first thing that you have to start doing is just to start trying to observe better. Go to a mall, just sit down and try to observe what happens with people. Whenever you are at work, like, you have the opportunity to have a lot of contact with a lot of people. So just try to observe what happens with them. How, like, what are they doing? What they're talking about? Are they worried? Is there any pain that they have? What are their complaints at the bars and the restaurants usually? So try to observe. Then find a pain to solve. Again, if it's not a pain, it won't be a good business idea. So the more painful is that problem, the better the idea will be, and the more chances of success you will have. And then if you are working by your own, try to at least create interdisciplinary teams for the ideation phase. You have no idea how useful it is to just work from, like, with someone that is from the marketing, but also with someone that is an engineer and super technical, someone that is a scientific and it's all about researching and everything. So try to test your idea or ideate your idea with people from different backgrounds. That's always super useful. And always engage in cheap and rapid prototyping. So start by doing something that you can build in your home, in your office, with very little materials, and then try to build an MVP that can actually tell you if there will be enough market or not for your idea. And then, of course, learn to iterate or pivot as fast as possible. So this is a game, and the game is about trying and failing until one day you will win. So the faster you can do this phase of trying and failure, then the faster you will win. But if you are just stuck with your idea and you believe it's the best idea and you won't change your idea even if people are telling you that it won't work, then it will be very difficult that you win fast. So try to be very flexible and learn to iterate and pivot as fast as possible. And then constrain ideas to what is, again, feasible, viable, and desirable. So don't forget that if you want to build something that is truly innovative, you need three components: feasible, viable, and desirable. Okay? So this is the design thinking methodology. Thank you so much for your time. Now we can answer some questions. And again, I just want to tell you that all these resources, the empathy map, the PDF, and I'm going to also upload a workbook of all the methodology with all the steps, will be in the community. So, and you can also find me there. If you have any questions, if you want to go over your idea with me, then please just send me a message in the chat. I'm as Valerie Kramis at the community of Altos Tahona Society, and I'll be happy just to answer all the questions you have.
Valerie, thank you. That was an incredible presentation. While we have just a few more minutes, I did want to highlight a couple of questions that we had. They're both from May G. And May asked that with their business idea / model, that they've been doing these 5 steps out of order. The question is, do you recommend halting the process a bit and working it back from step 1, or do you feel that that doesn't really matter?
No, it doesn't really matter. Of course, like, it's always good to have a lot of insights about your user, but as fast as you can start building something, it's good. Just make sure that you go through all the steps. Even if you already have built something, then go back and try to see if you have more insights when you empathize with the users and try to do some of the methods like immersing yourself in the lives of the end user and see if there's something that could be better of your company. Remember that these kind of methodologies are used also by companies that have 20, 30, 50 years in the market and are still learning about how to become innovative. So it's more like an innovation methodology that you can use for whatever you want, whenever you want, in the steps you want.
Well said. And we have one more question also from Meiji. And they said a lot of this discussion today has been based off of a physical product, it seems. Is there a way to help explain this process if the idea is more of a model?
Okay, yeah, sorry for that, because sometimes when we start talking about design thinking, it's more about the product, but this can be done also for the services. So when you are doing a service, the first phases of design thinking are very useful, but also when you are prototyping, the only difference is that you have to prototype differently because maybe you won't be able to rapid prototype with your things. So things that you can do. First of all, there's this tool called the Customer Journey Map. I'm going to upload that too. But it's always super useful for services because it tells you all the steps and all the touch points that a user will have with your service or with a model or with whatever. But there's always someone interacting with that model, right? So you can put it there. And then when you are building an MVP, then it's useful to have like the different methods, like, for example, a landing page or an Instagram account to see if there's people that are interested in that service. But at the same time, doing pilots can be also very interesting. So try to think about ways of how can you build that pilot. So I don't know, if you are thinking of a new restaurant, maybe try to do a pop-up event and just do that model during one day or one weekend and try to see what's the feedback from the consumers. And there's like different ways. If you want, you can just ask me in the community and I can tell you about ideas of how to prototype your idea. But there's many, many ways of do it, even if it's a model, even if it's a service, even if it's intangible, there's always a way to prototype the idea.
Great. Valerie, you're such a great resource, and you've listed so many resources that are available to everyone. Thank you so much. That was really, really wonderful. We also want to thank Altos Tequila for putting this on today. If you enjoyed this class, please hit the like or love button and show some love in the comments. And if you want to see more Portland Cocktail Week classes like this one, or if you want to see more like this one, follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook at facebook.com/PDXCW or YouTube at youtube.com/PDXCW. We're also at PDXCW and at Lush Life Productions on Instagram, and you can find out what's coming up next there. You can find out more about Tohono Society at Tohono Society, and you can find the Tohono Society competition submission form at pdxcwtohonosociety.com/competition or through the Tohono Society app, which you can sign up for at tohonosociety.com. I am on Instagram at MezcalFindsGen. Please shoot me a message if you want to talk more about agave. And tune in next Monday, March 10th, when Amy Ward, Alex Jump, and Shannon Michelle are bringing us industry lifestyle sustainability. Well, you'll learn more ways we can foster well-being for ourselves and our teams in a demanding and stressful environment. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.